What's up guys, welcome to another range day. Today we're going to be shooting one of my favorite handguns of all time, my CZ Shadow 2. Guys, if you enjoy the content that I'm making, then please make sure to like and subscribe and leave me a message down in the comments section. I hate asking, but it really does help with the algorithm a lot, so I would really appreciate it. And if you ring the bell icon, you should get notifications when new videos are released as well. Additionally, if you want to get more Chester's Hobbies content, you can follow me on Instagram where you can see what I'm working on and get previews of upcoming videos. And I'm also pretty active on Reddit if you like to follow along with the conversations there. Alright, well that's enough of that, so let's talk about the gun of the day, my CZ Shadow 2. So guys, I really think that it's important for me to point out right out of the gate here that CZ makes some of my all-time favorite handguns. The CZ Shadow 2 itself is easily in my top 5. My very first handgun that I ever purchased many moons ago was a CZ75B Omega. I got my hands on a lot of guns when I was trying to find the right one, and the ergonomics of the CZ75 series just fit perfectly in my hands. Now here we are, several years and dozens of CZ handguns later, and that is still very much the case. CZs really just feel like home to me. In the case of the Shadow 2 that we're talking about today, the ergonomics of the grip are just about as perfect as it gets for my hands. Now for reference, I have medium to large size hands with very long fingers, so it's a little bit odd, but this grip frame is fantastic for me. I also love heavy steel frame guns, and the roughly 46 ounce unloaded weight of the Shadow 2 makes it a very soft shooting gun. On top of that, you have CZ's signature internal slide rails, short slides, and low bore axis, which really helps minimize muzzle flip and reciprocating mass while helping keep your sights on target. Now speaking of heavy competition focused guns, if you enjoy them as well, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed because this video is part of an ongoing series that I'm doing where I'll be comparing heavy competition guns. I'm planning on doing individual videos with this CZ Shadow 2, as well as my Walther PDP match steel frame, Beretta 92X Performance, SIG P226X5, and my Canik Rival S. After all of the individual videos have been released, I'm planning on filming a dedicated comparison video weighing the pros and cons of each platform. It should be a ton of fun, guys, and I really hope to see you all there. Now, in my opinion, competition shooting is one of the best things that I ever did personally to improve my shooting capabilities. Now, I started out competing in action pistol competitions at my local range with a Glock 34, and I did okay in my first year. I was mostly in the middle or at the bottom of the pack, but I really had a lot to learn. I spent the entire winter off-season dry firing and working on my technique, and then right before the next season, I picked up this Shadow 2. Now, this was all the way back in 2018, so they were pretty much brand new at the time. I was actually the only one at my range that had one. With the awesome two-tone look of the urban gray frame and the black slide, it was definitely a looker, and everyone asked me about it. Because again, at the time, it was brand new and very few people had them. But more importantly than that, between all of the practice that I did over the winter combined with the mechanical advantages afforded to me by the Shadow 2, I came in first place and won my very first action pistol season. And then my second immediately after that. It was such an amazing gun for the money that the following year, several of my fellow shooters in my Action Pistol League had Shadow 2s on their hips as well. And now in 2024, the Shadow 2 is one of the most common competition guns on the range, and for good reason. It is a very easy and forgiving gun to shoot that doesn't break the bank like many other competition-focused guns on the market. Now, a lot of people out there might be wondering, does a heavy competition-focused gun like the Shadow 2 make you a better shooter? I would say no, absolutely not. There is no gun on the market that can replace the benefits of training and reps in both dry and live fire, at least in my opinion. Now, the Shadow 2 is, however, more forgiving of mistakes and possesses a lot of qualities that would allow a wide range of shooters from amateur to professional to potentially perform at a higher level than they normally would with lesser equipped options on the market. So let's talk a little bit more about what I've done to my personal Shadow 2, and then we'll hit the range and have some fun. Now, at this point, I probably have around 4,000 rounds through this gun. For some people, that's probably not a lot, but for me, because I have so many guns, it is a rare occurrence that I'm able to put that many rounds through just one of them. Now, the advantage of putting that many rounds through the gun is a lot of the parts have been naturally polished over time, so the trigger and slide rails are ultra smooth now. Now, when I first purchased my Shadow 2 back in 2018, optics really weren't very popular yet on handguns, so there was no optics ready version available. When I started getting into using optics on pistols, I could have sold this Shadow 2 and picked up an optics ready model, but I just loved everything about my Shadow 2, including how well broken in it is, so I didn't want to start over in that regard. I also really didn't want to get the slide milled for an optic because I wanted to still be able to shoot iron sights as well. So after literally years of deliberation with myself, I finally caved in and picked up a Primary Machine Harbinger V2 slide this year, which came pre-milled for this Trijicon SRO. Now this design removes the iron sights and seats the SRO SRO incredibly low on the slide. I have to say, the machining is downright fantastic here. I love the windowed lightning cuts on the top and sides, and even with the SRO mounted, this full-size slide assembly comes in about 2 ounces lighter than my original Shadow 2 slide with iron sights, which is extremely impressive. Theoretically, that lower reciprocating mass should result in less felt recoil on the range. Now, speaking of less felt recoil, one of the things that I noticed about the lightning cuts here is that there's essentially a perfect window cut into the top of the slide for some barrel ports. Now, the Shadow 2 is an incredibly smooth, fast, and flat shooting gun on its own, helped immensely by the ergonomics and the weight of the pistol, of course, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to work with United Firearms and see what we could do with that cut in the slide. So I picked up a spare factory Shadow 2 barrel and had them machine 5 inline ports into the barrel, which I'll be testing out on the range today. United Firearms did an awesome job with these barrel ports, and I am super excited to see how they affect the shooting experience on a gun that was already easily in my top 5 of all time. Now, the forward slide serrations have those nice lightning cuts that I mentioned, which I do think look great, but I do have to admit that they're a bit on the sharp side for press checks and racking with the front serrations. But they do still work very well, and I love them regardless. Now, I do have to point out that when I first received the slide from Primary Machine, it was fully and fairly thickly Cerakoted, including the slide rails. Now, they tell you that these slides need about 100 rounds or so to break in and fire fit to your specific Shadow 2 frame, but on this factory Cerakoted urban gray frame, I literally had to tap the slide on with a rubber mallet, and then it just flat out wouldn't move. So I carefully observed my original Shadow 2 slide that has broken in nicely after thousands of rounds, and took note of the natural polishing on the slide rails. I then did some very light sanding with 1000 grit sandpaper on the rails of the Primary Machine slide, and within just a couple of minutes I was up and running. Now, since that initial setup, I've put the recommended 100 rounds through the gun with the slide attached, along with a ton of dry fire racking, and it's smoothed out very nicely and runs great. I'm absolutely loving running a red dot on this gun. It's so flat shooting that it feels like it was really made for it from the beginning. Honestly, my only regret is that I waited so long to do it. Now, aside from the slide, I'm also running an 11-pound recoil spring and a 13-pound hammer spring. And then I have these awesome LOK Palm Swell Bogies grips that have the original CZ Shadow 2 logo etched into them with this really cool red liner that matches the red of the safety. These are some of the very first LOK grips that I ever purchased, and they work just as well now as they did when I first got them about 5 or 6 years ago. The palm swells fill my hands a lot better than the standard flat aluminum grips, and the texture of the bogies really plants my hands on the gun and gives me a very confident purchase to help control recoil and keep my sights on target. Other than that, the front and rear back straps have really nice 25 lines per inch style checkering that is aggressive and grippy, so I really like that. We have a decent undercut under the trigger guard and a fantastic dip in the back of the grip that helps lock the web of my hand into the deep beaver tail and gives me a lot of confidence when running the gun. Now, the safety levers on CZs are definitely one of my main gripes. They're often kind of spongy and not very positive. This one is okay, it's cleaned up a bit over time, but it's very low profile, which makes it a little bit challenging to actuate with my primary hand thumb. Now, my Shadow 2 did come with an extended safety lever in the box when I first got it, but I found that installing it made it really hard to drop the slide using the slide lock and release lever with my primary thumb, so I just kind of got used to the low profile safety instead. That big heavy rail and dust cover really helps keep a lot of the heft in the frame towards the muzzle of the gun without introducing more reciprocating mass, which is great, yet the gun still manages to balance very well for me. And then finally we come to the trigger. The Shadow 2 trigger has one of my all-time favorite triggers, especially this one with just how well broken in it is. The single action pull is around 2 to 2.5 pounds with a 13-pound hammer spring that I'm running, and the double action pull is just a little over 6 pounds, and it's very smooth with minimal to no stacking. It's fantastic. Now, the reset is not the shortest, but it's still plenty short and easy to run fast. Now, reloads with the Shadow 2 platform are very natural for me. The magazine release is in a perfect position for my primary hand thumb to actuate without breaking my grip. Magazines drop free most of the time as long as the springs aren't worn out. I find magazine insertion to be really smooth even without a magwell, which companies do make, but I just haven't really felt the need for it, honestly. There's a decent amount of beveling and flaring on the internal magwell, and I found it to be pretty adequate for me over the years. And then lastly, I love the standard CZ slide lock and release levers. They're slightly extended and stepped out from the frame, and they make it really easy for me to drop the slide with my primary hand thumb without breaking my grip. It's actually been quite a while since I shot my full-size Shadow 2 a lot, but I used to be able to reload it pretty fast, so we'll see how it goes on the range today. So that's what we got going on for today, guys. It's been a while since I spent a lot of time on my Shadow 2, and this is going to be my first full range day with this new optic setup on here, so I'm super excited to hit the range and see how my Shadow 2 performs. But before we get to the full range day, I want to do some testing and comparisons of the stock barrel versus the ported barrel from United Firearms. So I'm going to start off doing a back-to-back first impressions comparison of the two setups, and then I'll do a rapid-fire recoil comparison, and then some velocity tests to see how the ports are affecting velocity on the Shadow 2 as well. After that, we'll dive right in and have some fun on the range, and then we'll come back to the table and discuss how the day went. This should be a ton of fun, guys, so let's get to it. Alright, so first shots of the day, we're going to start with the unported, the stock barrel on the Shadow 2. Kind of give myself a refresher on how it feels. Yeah, I mean, that feels great. I've always loved the Shadow 2. Shoots really good for me. Has a really good return to zero. Very nice felt recoil. I've got the 11-pound spring in there right now. Let's try the ported setup and see how that feels. All right, so now we've got the inline porting from United Firearms. Looks fantastic. I've got a 10-pound recoil spring in there. Let's see how this feels. Oh, man. Woo! Wow. That feels incredible, guys. I can track the dot beautifully. It's a lot flatter shooting. If an already very flat shooting gun, it's a lot flatter shooting. It snaps right back on target. This is going to be a ton of fun, guys. Let's do this.
One 1,172. 1,162. 1,163. 1,162. 1,151. 1,152. 1,145. 1,126. 1,112. 1,133.
That was a pretty tight group for that speed, guys. I'm very happy with that. Whoa! That's a big hole. I gotta patch that. So guys, a lot of people have been asking me about these new Infinity targets that I've been using. These are self-healing, weatherproof targets made from recycled rubber by Infinite Defense, and they're estimated to last for about 7,000 rounds, which is pretty impressive. I love that I can safely shoot them at any range that I want, even point blank, and all I have to do to reset them is hit them with a little spray paint. I would definitely recommend them as convenient, portable targets for up-close training and fun on the range. If you want to try some out for yourself, you can use the code Chester10 to save a little bit on some great targets. Alright, now back to the video. Holy crap. Oh, that's insane. I love this thing. Woohoo! Spicy. I yeeted that thing. That was actually pretty sick. Look at that. Whoa. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty proud of that shot. Holy crap, guys. I was absolutely blown away by my ported Shadow 2 today. It's particularly wild for me because I've had this gun since 2018. I've put thousands of rounds through it and it's always been one of my favorites, but I have spent so much time and money chasing the next best thing and peak performance, when all the while I had one of my all-time favorite guns just sitting in my safe waiting for me. And I think that's probably fairly common. I think sometimes people can get wrapped up trying to find the next best thing or the new new hotness? I know I certainly do. But in reality, I've had this gun for 6 years now, and it is still easily one of my best shooting guns, especially now with the recent upgrades that I've made. As good as it was in its original configuration, combining the lightweight Primary Machine Harbinger V2 slide with the Trijicon SRO and the inline barrel porting from United Firearms put this gun way over the top for me today. I legitimately left the range today asking myself if it's really worth owning so many other guns when this one shoots so beautifully for me. Between the ergonomics, recoil impulse, trigger, speed, weight, and balance, the Shadow 2 is honestly the complete package for me in its current configuration. Alright, so let's talk specifics here. Starting with the barrel porting from United Firearms, with the 10-pound recoil spring, I shot 380 rounds with 100% reliability and great ejection. The recoil impulse compared to my non-ported barrel was noticeably muted and softened, muzzle flip was greatly reduced, and my return to zero was spectacular, with impressive groupings even under rapid fire. Now the Shadow 2 itself is already a great shooter in its stock configuration, but with these ports it really does feel like cheating with just how fast it gets back on target. Doubles, triples, and more felt completely effortless and fun. Now, equally impressive to me is that all of that additional performance only came at an average loss of 29 feet per second with Blazer 115, which is only about a 2.5% loss in velocity. In my opinion, the substantial performance increase with the barrel ports is absolutely worth the negligible loss in velocity here. And from a visual perspective, I absolutely love how the ports line up with the Primary Machine Harbinger V2 slide. It's a really clean look that also doesn't get nearly as dirty as other porting jobs that I've tried with less open slide configurations. As for the Harbinger V2 slide from Primary Machine itself, it is awesome, guys. It weighs about 2 ounces lighter than the stock slide setup, even with the SRO mounted, so there's less reciprocating mass, which no doubt contributed to the lower felt recoil. It looks great, the slide serrations are a little bit aggressive and kinda sharp, but they still work very well, and the SRO is extremely low on the slide, making for a very natural point of aim, which is especially important without backup iron sights. The SRO is a perfect complement to the Shadow 2, and I really can't believe that I waited this long to finally get an optic on here, but I'm really glad that I did. It was super easy to track the dot with a nice large window and definitely made the Shadow 2 much faster and more accurate for me than with iron sights alone. The combination of this Primary Machine slide with United's inline porting is absolutely sublime, and I can't recommend it enough. Beyond that, even though it had been quite a long time since I'd spent significant time on the range with my Shadow 2, it immediately felt like going home for me. The ergonomics of the grip area are second to none, and these LOK Palm Swell Bogies filled my hands out really well while adding some much needed texture over the stock aluminum grips. Reloads were fast, smooth, and fun, even without an oversized external magwell. I did have a few times where I closed the slide before the magazine was fully inserted, but I ultimately think that was me reaching a bit of a limit on how fast I can reload. The balance of the gun felt nearly perfect, which made point shooting and rapid transitions a breeze, and the trigger was fantastic as always. Now, I certainly won't tell you that CZ makes the best triggers in the world, but I have so much time with them that I just absolutely love running them. This trigger in particular is really well broken in, and so it was really easy to run fast with that light break and predictable reset, and it really made pulling off whatever cadence I was looking to do a very simple task. Really, the only negative that I have here is the mushy safety, but that's true of all CZs that don't have an extended safety lever. Although I do wish it was better, it's a trade-off that I'm willing to accept for something that performs so exceptionally well in literally every other category that I can think of. On top of all that, the Shadow 2 prices have come down to the point where it's probably one of the easiest guns to recommend for someone looking for a great shooting competition gun with room to grow in the future. I would personally say that the Shadow 2 is easily one of the absolute best values in handguns today, and I can wholeheartedly recommend it without hesitation. So that's going to be all for today, guys. I've got a ton of handgun reviews on the way, as well as more ARs, AKs, PCCs, and shotguns. Remember to like and subscribe, ring the bell, stay tuned, and thanks for stopping by.